May you and your family perish. I curse you 100 times. Let the love between you forever dry up. Let the grandmother suck the blood out of her granddaughter. And let your family curse me, and let there be no place for it.
I'm sure that majority of us at least have heard of Dracula by Bram Stoker. Maybe you already read it, like in my case. But by the way, I'm planning to read it next month and hopefully there will be discussion. But recently I decided to check out some Russian stories of vampires. And not just Russian stories, but Russian classics. Because, hey, Russian classics can actually be exciting. And in one of the bookshops in the city center, I found this book, The Vampire by Alexey Tolstoy. This is a collection of short stories of supernatural. Two of the stories are actually vampire stories. One of them is more religious story, and another one is a ghost story. And today I would like to talk about this book because I really enjoyed my time with this particular book. And I think if you've never actually tried Russian classics before, I think this book could be an ideal first step for you to try. Because this is actually a very fun book. There are no heavy themes to discuss, and it's just a very fast-paced and fun read. But first of all, I would like to share a fun fact about this book, because in English translation it is called The Vampire, but originally in Russian it is called Upyr. And this is an equivalent of vampire, but was mostly used in Slavic languages, and it is a bit old-fashioned word. And according to Slavic beliefs, people could become upyr if, for instance, they had an unnatural death, if they were murdered or they committed suicide, or maybe they were warlocks or practicing some dark magic when they were alive, or if they were murderers or criminals in their lives, or if their graves were desecrated. And it was believed in the past that these type of people could become upyr, or living dead that could feed on the blood of other living people, and they would rise from their graves 40 days after the burial. But they could be killed if their heart was pierced with a wooden stick. And even though the word upyr was primarily used in Russian folklore and was heavily associated with peasantry, these stories actually involve nobility. But as already mentioned, there are 4 stories in this book. The first one, the longest one, is actually The Vampire, followed by 3 shorter stories, Amena, The Family of the Vampire, and The Meeting After 300 Years. The short story Vampire was written by Alexey Tolstoy in 1841, and it's a Gothic horror short story. And our story starts when our protagonist, Ronevsky, goes to a ball and meets a very suspicious and weird character, Rybanenko. He is very pale and sickly looking, and his hair is completely white. And Rybanenko starts the conversation with a very peculiar thing to say, because he said to Ronevsky, "I can't believe that they invited vampires to the ball," which obviously piques curiosity of Ronevsky, and he starts asking what he actually means by it. And Rybanenko points to 2 people on the ball and tells Ronevsky that they're actually vampires. And Ronevsky, his curiosity piqued, goes across to these people, introduces himself, and meets a young lady that he is interested in. And she is a granddaughter of a suspected vampire lady. But it's not as simple as that, because this is actually a Russian doll story. And when I started reading it myself, I wasn't aware of the structure, and I thought myself that we are just facing something very traditional and usual in this type of stories. We see something suspicious, we discover what happens, and the resolution comes. But this is not the case in this particular story, because the plot expands and we have different pieces that we have to piece together in the end. Plot meanders and we're trying to understand what is actually happening. I found it quite an unusual way of doing it, just because I personally didn't expect it to happen, and I found it very entertaining, even though to be honest, by the end of it, I can't really say for sure that I understood all the links of the story. And at the same time, the ending is not very apparent, because we can't draw definite conclusion if vampires actually exist. it is left for you to decide. I personally found the story being a very interesting example of Russian vampire stories. It was very unusual read, and I would recommend it to you if you've never read anything like that before. The three other stories are much shorter, and they're concerned with some supernatural forces as well. As already mentioned, the family of the vampire story again is concerned with vampires, but it's more folk story where another character is going to a village and he meets a family there. And obviously, at some point, he starts encountering vampires. And the man, on the other hand, is a religious story, and it battles with questions of religion, how much you believe and how much you are willing to sacrifice in order to stand by your religion and your beliefs. And what is it the price to pay if you stray from the correct path, even if you think that there is nothing actually wrong about what you're doing. And the last short story, Meeting After 300 Years, is a more of a ghost story, and it's much more traditional in its plot than The Vampire. I don't really want to disclose much of the story just because they are so short, and it's very easy to spoil them, and probably just will remove so much fun out of reading if you decide to pick these books up.
And this is the edition that I bought for myself. This is a hardback. I found it very pretty, to be honest, even though recently there is some discourse about appropriateness of having stylized and cartoon-like covers, for especially for classics. But I think it can be actually good if they're trying to attract younger readers. And as you can see at the same time, the design of the cover is directly on the hardcover. There is no dust jacket. It's quite unusual for Russian prints to have a dust jacket. I think I was discussing it in one of my previous videos, but I do prefer it in this way because the book itself looks very beautiful. So I hope you like this short video of the book.
I really hope you enjoyed this very short review. I really didn't really want to go into details of the story just because they're so short. And I really hope that maybe you'll decide to give them a try. See you soon. Bye.